All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today we are going to answer questions like how do you heal from trauma? How do you integrate with your body when you go through exhaustion or burnout or pain? How do you come back and use the innate intelligence and wisdom that your body has to live a better life? So with me today, I have our guest, Sara Vatore. I think I'm saying your name right. I want to pronounce it Italian.
Yes,
Yes.
my very Italian husband. Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect, folks. I nailed it on the first try. So she is a wizard of many educational skill sets. To name a few, she has her master's in education. She is an expert in somatic integration using a process she calls the soma synthesis approach. And she is a melt method instructor. I will let her explain more of what she does, but we're diving in. Sara, welcome to the show, and thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really fun to be here with you today.
Amazing. So you've worked with athletes on a high level, you've worked with individuals on a high level. I know in this show where we have a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners that are watching that have been burnt out and exhausted. Also, an apology to my guests. If you hear me mute the mic, it's because I'm overcoming a cough. So I'm not dying, I'm just coughing. So Sara, I want to kick it over to you and just I have lots of questions for you, but
Sure.
where do you want to take it first? What are you most excited about? Like, what are you thinking about most right now or feeling most right now in the work that you're doing?
Sure. There's so many things, and I think one of the pillars of who I am in the world is this idea and concept of multidimensionality. I spent so long in my life growing up trying to do it the right way, the one way, all the shoulds and the expectations that we put on ourselves. I was very much a type A growing up and doing all the right things. And in my last job before I quit to kind of start my own business, I was a guidance counselor and found myself completely burnt out and overwhelmed and overloaded. And that showed up for me with my body really breaking down. A lot of autoimmune illnesses, a lot of different ways my body was expressing pain. I didn't have great access to my emotions, and I was just really overwhelmed. So that sort of kicked off my journey into working for myself and starting my own business, because I just couldn't do it anymore, working for someone else and putting in all that time and effort and destroying myself.
Yeah.
So in leaving that work, leaving the guidance counselor work, I was in a high school for 5 years. And through that time did a training called Somatic Experiencing, which is Peter Levine's work. And he looks at our body as mammalian organisms and how we're really wired to survive. And through doing that training simultaneously as I was working at the school, I really woke up in my body. I'd done a lot of therapy. I'd done like 20 years of therapy, but hadn't really learned anything about my body, didn't recognize how shut down I was. So different ways our body sort of expresses. We can be very shut down, but stuck in what I would call an autopilot. So I was a very high functioning shut down, meaning I had no access to what was going on in my body. And I just kept pushing through until my body really got very, very loud with me. And so doing this training, learning about our nervous system and how we're wired and how we're designed to function optimally and what was actually showing up in my body really allowed me to take pause and recognize that what I was doing wasn't working and I was really hurting myself. Wow. And so I quit my job so I could start my own business, and jazzed about helping other people who feel burnt out so that they don't have to feel that way anymore. I think we're really conditioned in a society to just keep going and pushing and no pain, no gain. And especially as entrepreneurs, if any of you are listening, right, it's like harder, faster, stronger, like keep going and, push and grind. And in my experience, I've really learned that's not the way to optimize our potential. That's actually really destructive. And there are ways that our systems are really cyclical. And so how we can harness our own cycles and really be in our rest and our
Mm-hmm.
restoration and our health and wellness, which then gives us our ability to achieve and optimize performance and
Mm-hmm.
do all the things that we want to do and hold all the pieces that we want to be holding as we're running our businesses. And for me, I homeschool, I have 2 kids. I'm homeschooling, I'm running my business, I'm running my household. So
Lord.
yeah. So being able to have capacity to
Mm-hmm.
hold all those things without my system physically collapsing, right? Yeah.
Wow. I mean, my mind is going in a few places. I mean, the most fascinating class I took in college, so I did like preclinical, pre-counseling psychology. It was a gen psych degree, but the focus was on pre-counseling. And the most fascinating class I took and the most counterintuitive class was trauma therapy. And we went through a lot of the stuff, Peter Levine and is that the Tiger book? The something?
Yeah,
Tiger?
his Waking the Tiger is one of his well-known books. Yeah.
I loved his stuff. And but it was counterintuitive. A lot of psychology comes really kind of naturally for me, but it was so fascinating. My mind goes in a few different places. So I guess one, I would be curious, like as people are watching this, right? Like if we paused and if you said like, okay, like for the people, like just to kind of almost have this be an interactive for people watching this, like, all right, if we paused and we said, okay, for people watching this right now, if they're like red alerts are going off, like, man, I want to try this. Is there something you have that's like, okay, hey, they could literally pause and do this exercise right now? Like, is there anything off the top of your head that like, hey, audience, try this? Like, do you have a little taster of what that would look like?
Sure. And
I'm putting you on the spot, but
no, totally cool. And I want to rewind even further because a lot of times people don't even know what somatic means or somatic
definition
experience
of terms.
means.
Yeah.
And so soma means the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're working with when we're looking at our nervous system or we're working with our body is being able to identify the ways that our system is communicating to us. So being able to recognize different sensations that show up inside, because so much we override those. We learn to hold our pee and not go and just make it through the end of the movie or the class, right? Or not eat because we are restricting or we don't have time, not sleeping because we, are going to bed too late because we're working or we're not sleeping well in general. So there are all of these ways that our body communicates our needs and our fundamental needs. And that's really the starting place when we want to start to explore the body, or if you're recognizing, oh, I'm pretty disconnected too, or I'm finding myself tired all the time, or I'm feeling really burnt out or fried. The starting point is reconnecting, starting to bring awareness in to what is your body actually saying?
Yeah.
Right. And can we pause with that so that we can start to listen and follow through with what the system is asking? Because there's some real basic foundational needs that we have: food and rest and emotional expression and pleasure. That all of those things, when we're ignoring them, our system isn't going to work well. Our body isn't going to optimize efficiently. And so many of us think, oh, I'm just going to push through and I'm just going to get it done anyways. And yet that's not going to produce the, optimal work or the peak performance that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So a starting place with reconnecting to the body or starting to think about some of these concepts would be just starting to recognize and identify basic needs. It seems almost silly, but you'll be surprised at how much we're just pausing or waiting or not expressing anger at someone or saying no, and we're smiling and saying yes. And so it's a really great boundary exercise to start to reconnect with what our system's actually communicating. And so much of the time it's hard to even do that because we're just going, we're just doing, and we're going, and we're on to the next, and we're, even if we don't feel stressed out, we're just busy.
Yeah.
I'm going from homeschooling to seeing a client to being on a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just like a lot of transitions. And so in that, can we offer a pause? Start a lot of times with clients with timers in the phone 3
Yeah.
times a day, 4 times a day, to just go off that just says, check in, or what do you need right now? You might need a water, you might need to go use the bathroom, you might need to just like go outside and scream for a second because you're frustrated, right?
Sign me up for that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's one of my favorites. The car is my favorite state.
Yes.
But that would be a starting place to start to bring in some reconnection if you're wanting to start to have a different kind of relationship with your body, and you're wanting to not feel tired or overloaded or overwhelmed or stressed out or burnt out. We have to rewind all the way back and reconnect to those foundational needs.
Okay. So you would say, hey, so somatic experiencing, the somatic work is the body, is the root word, the body. So it's reconnecting to the body. And the beginning place of this is just like observation, awareness, like
building
drawing
that
attention.
awareness.
Okay.
Especially when we've spent so long ignoring.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that really makes sense. I'm 100% tracking with you. Yeah, just becoming aware of like, oh, I'm feeling in this thing in my body, or there's this sensation.
Yeah, because most of us are cut off. A lot of us are cut off from sensation, right? Like particularly if you're in the United States, we live in a culture that is a very head and neck up. We are praised about our thinking. We are encouraged, right, to use our intellect and intelligence, and we often are not taught how to recognize what's going on in the body, and we're taught to ignore it. I work a lot with athletes. I work a lot with young athletes. This is a huge problem and I've worked in schools. It's just a huge problem. We're telling kids to, doesn't matter if they feel pain, doesn't matter if they're tired, do the next activity, keep pushing. So we're training kids very young, and it's why we have a population of really sick adults, because what happens is when we override the needs don't go away. All the emotions are still there. We're just stacking and stuffing. And so everything gets down and compressed, and then we get sick. Our body breaks down. And that's really my journey and my story. It was having a lot of very strange autoimmune illnesses, and it was from an entire lifetime and my parents' lifetimes of overriding, of ignoring, of not being in connection to what's true. And that causes a lot of dysfunction in a body.
Wow.
And so the nervous system, which is determining our safety and really governing our behavior, we are wired to survive as mammals. That's our foundational wiring. And so based on the patterns that we grew up in and how we've been functioning, our system is going to operate in the way to protect us, right? Protect us from failing, from getting hurt, from making a fool out of ourselves, from being rejected. There's all these ways our system operates so that we're okay. And so our body communicates to us through sensation. That's the language of the nervous system. And so going back to sort of this initial step, the first point is reconnecting with how we actually feel, what the body is actually communicating. Because for so many of us, if I say to you, what do you notice right now in your body? Most people are like, what are you talking about? I'm fine. I mean, you've done a lot of this work, so I could probably say that to you, and you could identify right now. Like right now, I'm feeling a little flush to my face because I'm excited. Like I'm a little front forward in my seat, so I can feel a little rocking, right? I can feel my stomach is digesting my food from my dinner, right? So there's all this stuff that's happening in our systems that we just don't pay attention to.
Man, okay, so if you're down, what if we said, okay, for everyone watching, we're just going to do a little exercise. I'll do it. Is there something off the top of your head in this sensory awareness that you could just like take us through a brief? Because I just think it'd be so cool. Because I think that some of these things, some people come on and we talk about ideas and concepts, and that's just kind of what it is. But this is something that's so like, hey, we've got our instrument right here. I've got my body with me right now. So if you're down, and maybe there's a few, like maybe we just take a few little breaks if other things come up. But if you're down to just take us on a brief little exercise, I'll be the audience and I'll do it.
Absolutely. So So one of the things that we're trying to do in the system is reconnect and basically foundationally feel safe.
Okay.
And I'm going to put safe in quotes because some of us, like, the reality is, I mean, I'm a white woman who grew up in a middle to upper class.
Yeah.
So like, I have a different level of safety than someone who looks different from me. So, but the idea is to be able to help your body register that it's okay in the environment that you're in.
Okay.
And so a starting point for folks is to start to recognize your body in the environment. So like right now, I'm just going to invite you to start to sense the parts of you that are connected to surface. And you can keep your eyes open or you can close them or have a soft gaze down and just start to sense what parts of you are touching surface. So you might notice underneath you, your chair is rising to meet you. You might start to sense your arms resting on the tabletop or on your lap. You might start to register your clothing on your skin or something different. And as you do that, we're just starting to give awareness to the fact that our system is a body in a room. And so once I've done that and I'm sensing body in seat, and sometimes if you can't feel that, if you don't know what I mean, just move your butt in your seat right now. So you can feel that your butt is connected to a chair or a bed or a floor, right? And then from here, I'm just going to invite you to start to look around the room that you're in. So you're opening your eyes and we're a body in a chair. And as you're starting to look around the room, just let your eyes start to land on an object or two. And so we're just really gently turning our head and our neck. And you can even like look behind you. And we're just noticing objects. The other thing you can do here that's kind of fun is pick a color and look for the color. So if I picked purple, I'm seeing sort of a purple painting over here, and I have a little purple butterfly over here, and I have a picture over here that's purple as well. So we can look for objects, or we can look for colors. And then bringing that awareness just back now to your body and surface. And notice if you feel just like a little bit more landed. So you might feel your feet now. You might feel the back of your body, like your spine connected to the back of your chair, or something different. Yeah, and what are you noticing as you do this?
It was interesting, like even almost instantly when you just said surface, I just felt my feet, and like I just felt the sensation of like sock carpet.
Yes.
I have socks on, so pressure of the carpet on the sock touching my feet, and it was like calming. It was like oh, like there's my feet. It's yeah, it was like a calming. It was like instantly like calming.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, right? We are foundationally, we're mammals, right? Like that is the baseline of our wiring. And so we're just helping the mammalian body, our organism as a body, just register that it's just a body in a room, right? We're not back in the cave days. There's no big dinosaur chasing us, right? There's no dude with a knife like going after us. There's no bus that's going to hit us, right? We're just a body in a room.
Yeah.
And bringing our awareness back to that foundational point, right? Separate from whatever crazy stories we got going on in our heads.
Yeah.
Right? Separate from what we have to do that's coming up, or what we're dreading about, or how much money we have to bring in this month, right? Separate from the stories and the thought waves that are going on, it's the brainwave activity, just helping the body register that it's in a present moment.
Yeah.
This is what meditation is foundationally, but it's very hard to sit and like calm a body when we're used to just always being on the go. Right? Particularly for the entrepreneurs that I work with, right? Like we're always moving. And so this can be a quick exercise to do in those moments when you set a timer to just interrupt the habituated pattern for a minute.
Yeah.
This can be 30 seconds. This can be 1 minute. This can be 2 minutes. It can be 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But to just start to take a second to just register, oh, I'm a body.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking to our audience real quick, you guys, if you're watching this, and you just stop it right now and rewind and do the activity. Like if you didn't do the activity, or if you're driving, just pause it and rewind it 5-10 minutes and just do it with us. Like if it doesn't, you don't have to look weird if you're in a public space, but do the activity. That's the whole point, is taking action. So a brief shout out to our audience.
And I would also add with that too, what's so great about this to everyone listening is it doesn't look like you're doing anything. You don't have to close your eyes. You're purely trying to use what's called interoception, which is our ability to internally sense what's going on. It's a sense that we have that we're not told about, that's not developed, just like sight and smell and taste, right? Our interoceptive ability is our ability to sense what's going on inside, to sense breath, to sense heartbeat, to sense the fact that I'm a body sitting on a chair, right? Temperature, all of that. So you're just bringing in that awareness and trying to hone that skill. And so if you're doing this and you're like, I don't feel anything, it's totally normal, because we do spend so much time overriding. But the more you practice, the more nuance it gets. And maybe the first time you do it, you feel your feet, and the next time you're feeling inside what's going on too at the same time. So this is a skill we can develop and hone, and really comes in handy in lots of different ways.
Man, that's so good. That's so good. So here's a question for you. So something that, like, well, a caveat, sometimes as a business owner, entrepreneur, there's almost like a sense of guilt around coming down for a minute, or it's like, oh, I should be doing something. Which is true. Like our job is to create value in the marketplace. And so it's like, I do need to be creating value, but, there can be a sense of guilt if there's not clear boundaries. So I'm wondering the tension that I feel, that I'm sure you felt, and a lot of business owners feel, but I would even say high performers like athletes. My wife's a family medicine doc. Okay, so this challenge, and her and I were even talking about this a while ago, because she actually did her senior thesis project on burnout for medical residents. So this tension between the need to be a high performer and then the need to approach your body with gentle awareness, because sometimes it can feel like it's an either I'm on vacation, or these people that are like, oh man, I worked on Wall Street and now I'm a yoga instructor. Like, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like I got burnt out and so I left it. But sometimes it's less stories of like, okay, I worked on Wall Street and I still do. I took a break and I've learned how to integrate, like, excuse me. So I think about, I know people that work in a high level in the military. My wife's in the medical world. That's an extremely competitive, like you have to still demand that you perform at a high level. So I think of people that I know in the medical space. I think of myself, people that I know in the entrepreneur space, that if I'm not performing at a high level, at least I'm like, I pushing myself to like, hey, so I've got some like follow-up questions, some thoughts of my own, but like talk to that of like this juxtaposition of the need to perform at a high level. Like you don't get to go on eternal vacation, but the need to approach with gentle awareness, or fill in the blank.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important question and theme to be exploring, because this is really the conditioning of our culture, where we're trained that stopping is lazy, stopping is a problem, not doing is bad and wrong. And what I'll say, and I say this to everyone I work with, young and old, rest equals doing. Okay. Write it real big. I'm going to write it everywhere. Rest equals doing. Rest is an active state.
Okay.
Rest is a state where we're replenishing and restoring and repairing, no matter what profession or sport we're participating in. That is where we're going to then optimize our performance later.
Okay.
So to start to flip the script, and the story that we might have as entrepreneurs or high performers that we just can't stop or it's a problem, actually not stopping is going to make you less efficient. Not stopping is going to burn you out. Right? So really helping to start to see and teach yourself and reprogram and put in this new belief, which is our bodies are not designed to be 100% working 100% of the time. They're not designed to be that high functioning.
Yeah.
And particularly if you have a female body and you have a cycle, we have a programmed in amazing clock that tells us when to rest. Right. And during that time, when I honor that cycle, my efficient window is amazing. When you actually allow yourself the rest, when we actually take care of ourselves in these ways, our brain works better. We have access to our potential in a way that we don't have when we just keep pushing through. And we won't know that unless we actually give the rest stuff a chance. And so, my story of being a guidance counselor, then I quit my job. So I'm 7 years in. It's been 7 years of my business. My first 2 years, I said yes to everything. And I totally did the same thing that I did when I was a guidance counselor, because that's the pattern. Fill the space. Ooh, people see value in me. I'm making money. This is awesome. I'm just going to say yes to everything. And then I totally got overwhelmed, overloaded, and was exhausted. I'm not any good. I'm not good to myself. I'm not good to my clients. I'm not good to my family. I'm grumpy. It's just not helpful. And so this has been my journey in these cyclical ways of how do we really honor the rest? How do we weave it in? Right. So it's not just one vacation every 5 years. Right. Like, how are we actually weaving it in? And so for me, it starts with the moments on the phone in our day. It starts with actually scheduling out blocks of time, like a priority, like a client, right? Scheduling it in on a calendar, because it's part of the work. So those of us who can't rest for just rest and to take care of ourselves, right? It's in service to your business. It's in service to how you're functioning and your creativity and your ability to produce the things that you're producing. So it's really helping to shift the story that we have around like what rest means to us, because we've all gotten different messages from family members. I work a lot with teenagers. I also, remember my childhood. My dad ran his own business. My mom worked full time. I got home from school. I did my homework. I went to dance for 4 hours. I came home. I went to bed. I woke up and I did it again. Like there was no rest. And so many of the people that I work with, like you're saying, they feel guilty. And this starts very young, because none of our parents rested. They were all working and out and around and like trying to take care of us. So we don't have models growing up that rest is okay. And so it's really helping to start to see this is a foundational need of our organism in order to optimize our performance. And so if you are a high performer and you want to be making a lot of money and being, really big in the world and have a very successful business, rest is the secret weapon to that happening well and happening quickly and happening in a way that your body then doesn't fall apart later. Right? Because there are ways that we're very good at overriding, or we're good at pushing through and going until we crash. And the crash part it's not needed, right? So many entrepreneurs that I work with that come to me, it's, they've put themselves out and they're visible and they're pushing themselves. And then they go and they run a big workshop and they have 50 people and it's awesome. And then they get home from the workshop and they get sick for a week. And then the cycle happens again. So that sickness is your body is saying to you, hey, like there's a different way to do this. So that's not happening.
I'm with you. What, so yeah, that's good. What do you think? Okay, so let's chunk this down to let's say like a day, like the model of, I was kind of like, hey, win the day. Like if we can copy and paste a day, we have a shot at this thing. So let's say someone's just got they've got a couple kiddos, they've got let's say they've maybe got a 9 to 5, and they've also got a business they're trying to build. Let's just say that there's enough that they have on the plate that they could fill their day. What would you say for, could you give some chunks saying, hey, this is not hey, why don't you just take the day off? This is like, these are not, this is like the non-negotiable for optimal output. Like, hey, the law of diminishing return beyond this is going to kick in.
Right.
So what would you start chunking from waking up to going to bed, where you say like, these chunks of body awareness, somatic integration, rest are going to like yield for you?
That's a great question. And I'll speak to myself, like what I do for me. And
awesome.
Really the key here for everyone listening is, and watching, is getting really curious about what works best for your body. Right? Because we all are needing different things in different ways.
Yeah.
So for me, I have daily needs, weekly needs, and quarterly needs. Okay, so I go, non-negotiable, I go away 4 times a year, a whole weekend alone.
Yes, heck yeah, I'm with you.
On the calendar, like scheduled in. It's part of my this is for my business. This is for my mental health. This is for my sanity. This is for my creativity, right? Like no non-working trips alone, right? So when I first started my business, I was really good at going away, but it was to teach, run a workshop. I never went away alone, like just to be alone, but I would go away a lot to work. That's not the same. It doesn't count. Okay. So,
facts.
right. So 4 times a year, I'm away for a weekend. It's on the calendar so my nervous system can see it. So my nervous system knows that there's this out that I'm going to get to look forward to. Right. So that's sort of the year set up with my away weekends. Then every week, I am making sure that I have at least a half of a day, right? 4 to 6 hours, non-negotiable. That's mine.
Okay.
So I might do work in that time. And this is, again, as a mom, and who I'm homeschooling, like, my husband does 3 days, and those are like the 3 days I work most. But in those days, I take a whole afternoon, and that's I get to let my body lead time, really. And so I sit and I wait until I feel pulled to do a thing. I'm not doing it because my brain's like, oh, you got to get this done right now, or you got to like be productive, like, or you got to meditate so you get some good content. Because I used to do that too, right? Like spiritual exploration, so I can have content, but not for myself. So the half a day for me then allows me to. I might read a little bit. I might dance. I might go for a walk. I might, I'm training something called the melt method, which is this just delicious modality that uses these rollers and get like a nice self massage, and it flushes our connective tissue and helps everything come to rest. So I melt a lot in that time. I'm doing things and reconnecting to what my body needs. During that time also is usually when, if I've overrode or shoved something that week, if something shitty has happened, or like some big emotional something that I didn't get to be in process about, I will make sure that I'm giving myself some space to be in that process. So that that I'm not holding on to things. Because we hold on to so much when we just ignore this and ignore that, or like, I'm not going to scream at my son right now for the 19th time I've told him to shut the damn light. Okay. Like, I'm not going to scream at him because that would be inappropriate. Right. But I still have the impulse to scream. Right? So I'm shoving that, right? I'm overriding my impulse so I can be socially appropriate with my kid and not traumatize him. Right. So there are all these choices we do make that we are overriding, but we're intentionally making those choices. So for me, that day or half day becomes my space. Sometimes in that day, that time, I might work because I feel really motivated and like really inspired, or I'll go for a walk and then I'm dancing. And then all of a sudden I have this idea for a blog post, or, you know, my theme for, you know, my dance class came through or whatever, and I'll write it down. But it's not the main focus. Like, that's not like what I'm setting out to do. I'm set out to do in that time chunk. I'm set out to honor what my body is needing and to connect with what's wanting to happen. And I do have to say, for those of you listening who have not done this before, it took me a really long time to like be able to know what that is. Cause like, again, my brain's like, oh, meditate or do something so that you like get some content, or like, shouldn't you be doing something right now? Right. And so it took a while to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to sit on my bed and I'm going to have my books and my tarot cards and my journal and my drawing materials and, you know, and a snack and a drink. And I'm going to just sit there for a second until I like genuinely from inside feel pulled to have a sip, or feel pulled to pick up my journal and write something. And so having lots of patience with yourself if you just have trouble stopping. Like, it's something we have to repattern and rewire. But we can, and that's the beautiful thing about the body. Like, we have this ability. We're not stuck or fixed in any one way. We get to reprogram and shift things if we want to. So we have my quarterly going away trips. I have my weekend, half a day at least. And then daily, I'm making sure that I at least have 30 minutes, if not longer, at different points. So for me, my time's usually in my morning because I'm so grateful, but my 9-year-old likes to sleep till like 9:30. I don't know how he's always been a late sleeper, so I'm blessed. So sometimes I'll get like, you know, I'll set my husband gets up early for work. I have 1 to 2 hours in the morning where I have to work really hard not to open up my computer first thing and start. Right. But that's an intention. So I'll have my water, I'll melt, maybe I'll do a little movement, then I'll open up my computer and like get myself situated for my day. But I'm making sure that I have no screen input right away in the morning. And I do that at night too. And then throughout my day, I don't need to anymore, but I definitely started with the timers. I'm like, depending on your schedule, my goal always, because I work a lot with people who are have very full lives. And so this is not to try to like, oh God, make all this extra space that doesn't exist, right? Like, I really, if anyone understands, I understand the realities of what it's like to be holding all these things. So it's getting really crafty at fitting in moments, like what already exists in your schedule. Where that you can stretch out or have an extra moment. So the best time, and this seems a little silly, is bathroom. Because we all go to the bathroom, right? And so can that walk to the bathroom be the most slow and delicious and calming walk that you've ever had by feeling your feet? Like, can you do some stretches in the mirror, like when you're there, or like on your way back to your desk, like picking moments that already exist. One of my favorite stories for like those of you out there with young kids. And so before COVID, when I was like, when my kids were still in school, before we decided to homeschool, my favorite moment, it was 1 minute, was I would buckle my son in the back seat to get to preschool. And no matter if he was screaming or didn't want to go or how difficult it was to get out the door, buckle him in, shut the door, and my walk from the back seat around the car to my front door, to the front of the car to get in to drive him to school, was the most delicious minute ever. I'm looking at the trees. I'm seeing if there's the hummingbird like that I like. I'm taking 2 breaths. Now I'm talking about 45 seconds. Right? But we are so in automatic that we're not even taking that time. So it can be at first really simple in your day-to-day of like, where can you just get an extra moment to just stop for a second? Right. And that's really hard because like the habituated pattern is going to be the motor. A lot of us feel that grind inside. I just got to get him to preschool. I just got to do this. Can we pause? Can we rest back in?
Yeah.
Right? Be coming from this place of ease.
Yeah.
Ease doesn't mean easy, but it can be a slower, more intentional choice and multiple choices throughout your day that then help you feel better long term. This is a very long answer to.
No, that was perfect. That was awesome. Do you find, so some of my curiosity would be, can I lean into, or I imagine I can. So it would be like, how could I lean in to my body's guidance? Let's say in an afternoon, I'm still working a 9-to-5 job. So
yeah.
I have a freight brokerage business I run 7 to 3. I get home, I switch gears to YouTube show and some of the other coaching, the coaching business I have. So it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, I have like tons of stuff to do and nothing to do at the same time, in terms of like, I get to choose what and how much. So part of my curiosity is like, okay, could I lean into sort of a rested, guided, still highly productive, but sort of a pace, like, okay, what would that look like to kind of tune into my body and be like, all right, what do we feel, even if I maybe have the day scheduled out, but like, hey, how could I kind of take this on the road, kind of take it and in a performing, applied way in the afternoon, like listening to the wisdom that the body might provide. What might that look like?
Yeah. And so for me, what I like to do, and again, this is about, for, those of you watching, it's about finding the systems that work best for you and like getting curious and experimenting. So for me, what works really well, and so I have Friday, Saturday, I have Saturday, Sunday, Monday are like my days to work. Still home, my kids are around. it's still a thing. But what I'll do on like Friday night or Saturday morning before everything is I will like laundry list all of the things that like I would like to get done or that need to get done. And I'll chunk like what's important. And then I always start with like some sort of like rest or body oriented thing. And so for some people that's meditation, but that can be very hard for those of us who are overachieving, high functioning folks. So for me, it's like a movement thing. So I'll dance, I'll put some music on, or I'll go for a walk outside, or I'll just walk around my backyard. Like, so I'm always starting whatever my work day is with something that's for me and my body.
Okay.
And then from that place, I then have the list that's already been organized, and I can see, ooh, what do I feel like doing?
Yeah.
And I go, and then I'm like kind of leaning into my intuition to like picking the thing that feels good.
Yeah. And
then I do the thing and I check in and see how I feel.
Yeah.
And, the days where I'm like, oh my God, I got to get so much done. And like, oh, it has to happen.
Those days,
right, are the ones where I probably need to rest more. Because what happens, it's so fascinating, is when I actually allow myself to not work, because I'm like pushing too much, like I can feel myself, I'm like efforting, and then I'm like rewriting the same stupid sentence in an email, or like my brain's not like all there because I'm fried, is I take the break and then I have energy all of a sudden. I might work later in the evening, or I might wake up Sunday and be like, oh, wow, great. And then like, I just get like 12 things done. So there are ways that our efficiency comes online when we are actually slowing ourselves down.
Right.
And like building in the break. So if I were working with you, right, and we're talking about this, what I would say is, in between when you get home from your 7 to 3, your 9 to 5, before you start the other stuff, like what are you doing for yourself? Like what time are you taking to reset, and maybe to take a shower, to energetically cleanse like your day, like to like do something that would be nourishing and restorative, like have like a real fueling, like light energy snack or smoothie or something, and then picking something that would feel like really delicious for yourself to do for like a half hour.
Okay.
And then from that point, and experimenting, Like, does that shut you down and then you're too tired to do anything else that night? Like, does that energize you and now you're ready to like knock some things off your list?
Yeah.
We want the motivation to come from within. When our nervous system is working and optimally functioning, we have cycles of real serious surges of energy. Like that are real, that are not put on, that are not like, oh, I'm pushing through.
And I've experienced, and to jump in, but I've experienced that where for me, it's trying to maybe create some routinization where I'm like, I've totally experienced the surge of kind of being in the flow, being in the zone where it just flows effortlessly and easily.
Yes.
So it's trying to figure out that like yin and yang between, okay, leaning into discipline, leaning into when I don't want to do it, but also, hey, are there ways to be like, okay, I've got a long list of stuff that has to be done, and I do need to exercise some will and some discipline, but is there a way to do this where I'm not fighting against internal resistance and procrastination?
Yeah, for sure. And it's getting really like curious with ourselves around sort of like what that right combo is, right? Because you know, procrastinate, like when we get into procrastination, like that can be our system in like a little freeze, like our system is overloaded, and so we're kind of like paused. And so what would it be like in those moments to like lean into the pause for a second and just invite in some ease? There's lots of times where I look at my list and I'm like, oh God, like I don't want to do any of this today. And so if I just take some time, like for a minute, and just like really connect to myself and connect to basic needs. Like if you have not eaten anything, or you have not hydrated, or you haven't gotten sleep, those things are like real components that then play into like how we're functioning. So it's like doing sort of basic needs checks. Have I had something to eat? Like, what's my water today? Like, do I need to use the bathroom? And then looking at the list and saying, hey, like, what could I do with some ease right now? You know? And so for me, my favorite thing to do is like, when I don't want to, is like, I make a cup of my favorite tea. Like I'm putting on like music that I like in the background. I'm looking at when my time off is in my calendar, so my brain can see it, right? So it's why calendars are so important, like to really block off those days, block off those weekends. So like my brain can be like, oh, Saturday, I get those 4 hours. Okay, like I'm going to power through now. It's like showing your system the out, right? We go into shutdown and freeze and procrastination when we feel stuck or trapped. Right? So what are the ways that we can open it up where things aren't have tos or shoulds, and they're just because like we're feeling called to do it?
Yeah. And so you will, if you're feeling that lockup, that procrastination, I relate to that. You'll take a beat, for how long, because you know, sometimes then it can be in that cycle of you're procrastinating the day away or the evening away. Well, how long does that beat last? And then you show yourself when your next vacation time off is.
Yeah, I think it's really tricky because it depends on sort of what's going on and how much time I have and when deadlines are, right? So if things are on deadline, like if I have an email that has to go, you know, I have to get to my virtual assistant like in time, like I might I might take a break and then push myself through that. I have to say, the times where I've just scrapped everything and I'm like, F this, like I can't do this right now, like I'm too overloaded, and then I take a nap, or I like actually do the thing my body wants. Like this is the trick, I think, as well. It's not procrastinating and then I'm going to turn on TV and zone out. Right. It's like, what do I actually need? I need to sit outside. I need fresh air. I need sunlight. I need food. Usually I need a nap. I mean, like for me, that's foundationally, I'm just exhausted. And I've never been disappointed with myself when I then sleep for 3 hours and then I wake up and I'm like, and I'm like all energized.
Okay. No, that's really good. And it's right. And that's the challenge or the trick is like, how to live a life that is highly productive, you're creative in the sense of that I'm like, okay, I am creating the things I was made to create. I'm living out my calling, my purpose, my mission, that I'm offering. I'm offering the best that I can to planet Earth, and ideally doing that in a way where isn't constantly fighting against myself or that resistant energy. And so, yeah, figuring that out, and hopefully finding that rhythm on a daily basis where there is some leaning in, like, okay, we're gonna push, but still, and that's something I'm still learning how to do, that yin and yang. So that's good.
Yeah, and I would also say too, time chunking is super helpful for me, particularly when I'm feeling like resistant to working. So like time chunking my work periods like in short bursts. So like I'll set an alarm for 45 minutes and I'll say I'm going to work on this for 45 minutes and see how much I get done. And then I'll reevaluate at that point. Right. And most of the time when I do that, I've gotten the thing done that I didn't want to do. Yeah. And so again, that's another great way to show your nervous system, right? Like, oh, I'm just going to work for 30 minutes. I'm going to take 30 minutes break. Right. So you can give yourself, like, on a more procrastinating day, permission to just work a little bit and then have a long break, and work a little bit and have a long break. That's better than just not doing anything or feeling immobilized, right? Because there's lots of us that like then just procrastinate, particularly if you're doing both. Like you're doing something very challenging. You're working full time and you're also trying to run your own business like that. Like you're doing 2 jobs, 2 big jobs.
2 for the price of 1.
Yeah. 2 for the price of 1, right? So like there are ways that, you know, in order to get that up and going and off the ground, you are going to have to override and you are going to have to push through. But what are the ways we can support that in your system? Like, what are the ways that like you can see you're out, you know, that like by 8 o'clock, you're turning it down, you're shutting it off, and you're going to get a solid 2 hours to yourself before you try to get into bed.
Yeah. And I think that, I think there's a name for it, but like 25 minutes work and then a 5-minute break and then work 12.
Oh yeah. There's some system, I think.
But I will say, like, I got my, my little time here. I will say that it does, when I use it, it really does help, to put boundaries to this infinite vortex of work. That's like, okay, hey, Rollins, you're gonna work for 25 minutes, then you're gonna take a break. Like, I just need you to, like, just a little bit of a bump. And there's like boundary lines, there's time boundaries to it. And so, yeah, I do think whatever time limit does help. And then to know, like, hey man, you're versus like just screwing around on Instagram, like, hey, you've got a hard stop at 7:30 when the wife comes home, we're gonna eat dinner. So that's, you know, get it done or don't. So I think those things do help. And it's, for me, it's learning how to, like, hey, can I unplug the resistant energy and like flow with it? So I think that is something I have practiced that does help.
Love that. And I think too, like, you know, we're talking about rest, or I'm using the word rest, but there are lots of ways to be in like what I would call an active rest, right? So rest doesn't just mean like I'm lying down and taking a nap, or like, you know, I'm zoning out at the TV. Like, we can go for a walk, we can sit outside, you know, we can pick up a book and read something that we're enjoying, right? For me, I'm obsessed with my Oracle card deck. So like, that's something that I love to do in bed. Like I'll pull cards, or like explore the dreams that I've had. So like, there are lots of things that I've learned. I've had to really learn because I was such a people pleaser. I had no idea what I wanted. The first 30 years of my life was just helping everybody else do their things and make sure everybody else was okay. So I've really had to learn and undiscover for myself, like, what do I like? What's enjoyable? What feels restorative? And it's why I really like the melt method, because particularly for those of us who are like high functioning doers, it gives you something to do. You do a specific thing with your hands, you do a specific things with the roller, and it actually helps your body, your nervous system come completely into like a down regulated rest state. That's very hard to do if we're just trying to get ourselves to meditate. So I find for me and my body, and for the clients that I work with who have similar profiles, having something like that, or like, you know, I have clients that like yoga. I'm not a yoga person, but I like dance. That's like my thing. I'll put some music on, finding the thing that works for you in terms of like what feels good and actually restorative.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to, one of the things I would do, I really tried to have, I try to have a day off. I don't have kids yet. So, but also at bare minimum, just like a half day off on Saturday. But yeah, one of the things that I would love doing is I would sometimes listen to classical music, maybe like cello or just like real soothing music, like instrumental music. And then I would do like watercolors for an hour or something, you know, just like, yeah, just kind of like float away. And that right amount of like active rest to like give my brain something to do, but enough that I could kind of like fall into like a trance state. And that's similar, like if I'm like mowing the lawn or sometimes doing house cleaning. Sometimes it's almost like that's like a trance state, like you kind of are in, I don't know what you'd call it, but yeah, kind of like a floating off space. So
yeah, well, and you're in when you're doing those things that you know how to do, you're in your hindbrain, you're in sort of like muscle memory and programming that's already there. And so you don't have to sort of have that like intense focus that we have or the urgency that we're having. We get to really soften that part of our focus and just be in this exploration. And then that fosters creativity later in our business in other ways.
Yeah. Come on. Well, I know you have been extremely gracious with the time zone change. And so a couple questions as we land, and then obviously there's the open blanket, just whatever else you want to add. But okay, so two things. So one, as people are listening to this, if we bookended this by doing another exercise activity, is there something else that you could lead us through that you'd say, hey, if someone's listening to everything you're saying and they're just like nodding their head the whole way and they're like, yes, I know that I need this. Is there something else that you could lead us through that would be like to a bookend to the show that someone could like stop it right now and like literally go through?
Sure. I can show you a cool breathing technique that is really helpful. And especially for those of you watching and listening who are like, I can't get myself to stop. So this is a really good thing. Before I go into that, what I will say to folks is that another place to start when you're starting to identify your body is noticing like our system has these like activation and deactivation scales of like how stressed out we are, how frustrated we are, how excited we are. And so I like to use like a 0 to 10 scale to start to identify. This is part of the building awareness of like where I'm at. So if 0 is I'm calm and relaxed and centered and ready, and 10 is like I'm freaking out. Right. And I would say 10 also, it's like frustrated, anger, fear, anxiety, stress, but it's also excitement. When we're excited, our body does the same thing. Our heart rate increases, our breathing gets shallow, our muscles get tight. There are these automatic things that happen. But again, we're usually like totally oblivious to any of it until like we're raging at our kids or we're yelling at our friend or our spouse. And so starting to identify your number scale, like where are you a 0? Where in your life are you a 0? Most people look at me and say, I'm never a 0. Where in your life have you been a 0 or close to a 0? My happy place is the beach. Where's your happy place, Matthew?
Oh, you know, I will concur with you. There's many happy places, but sitting quietly on the beach, staring at the ocean. That's a good one. That's a good one. I'll concur.
Right. And so noticing sort of like how you feel, how your body physically feels when you're a 0 or when you're close to a 0 is a really great starting point. Because for so many of us, it's very hard to calm down or to rest if I'm never calm or resting. Right.
Ding, ding, ding,
so
ding,
like,
ding.
and people get so frustrated with themselves, like, why can't I just rest? Or why can't I stop? Or why can't I slow down? Well, hey, if we've not done that for the last 30 years or 25 years or whatever, it's going to be very hard to get our bodies to slow down enough to do that. So starting to recognize and look for where you're 0. Is it at night when you're lying in bed? Is it when you're taking a shower after you got home? Like, is it first thing in the morning when you're sipping your coffee and you haven't done anything yet? Like, where in your life like, do you actually feel relatively lower on the scale? And when you feel that way, starting to recognize it, starting to bring awareness in that moment, just like we did at the beginning with feeling your seat and checking in. Like, your body feels a very certain way when we're stressed, and then also when we're calmer. So starting to extra awareness and intention and focus on being calm. Because our body's wired to look for the other. It's wired to look for the danger. So it's going at the beginning when we're learning and training ourselves, we have to make an extra effort to start to recognize little shifts of feeling better or feeling calmer or feeling less stressed. So I want to start by saying that, because when you start to notice your number, then when your number starts to tick up, that's when I need to pause. That's when I need to interrupt. That's when I need to sort of like, well, let's just take a moment. And there are lots of things that are out there now. I mean, with the internet and Instagram and all the things with the quippy biohacks and all that stuff for your nervous system. And what I'll say about that is finding the tools that work for your body, trying lots of things, and then noticing like, oh, do I feel calmer after I've done that? Like you said, you felt your feet and you're like, oh, I immediately was able to recognize everything settled. Cool, because we don't do that enough, right? So doing that again and again and noticing the ways that our body responds. So what I'll lead us through now is something that was taught to me by one of my teachers, Gabriella Lachara, and she has a method called the Lachara method that blends neuroscience and somatics and energetics and all sorts of things. But this is a technique called the primal brain reset. So primal brain is at the base of our skull, and that's the part of us that's really wired for being on alert and looking for the danger. So obviously we can't like go in there and like like cut through the bone and snip. So what we're going to do is use a couple of pressure points behind our ears to send a little bit of information to that primal brain that like, hey, we're safe, everything's okay. And so to find the point, if you take like your 2 pointer fingers and drag them behind the creases of your ears until you get to the like dip. In the dip, if you push back up behind your earlobes, you're going to feel bony bits. And there, if you like make little circles, they're almost like little tiny doorknobs. They're round. You feel that? The base there?
So if I come behind, I feel something that if I push on this, it hurts a little bit. Like
higher up, higher. Yep, a little up higher. Yep, right there. That bone.
Oh, there's like there?
Right in there. Yep.
Okay, yeah, like a doorknobby thing.
Yeah, a little doorknobby. Yeah. And that's called your Atlas point. And so what we're going to do, I'll explain the breathing and then I'll walk us through it as we're doing it. But when we're going to push on those points gently, we don't have to like really slam. And I know you're not feeling good, and that's probably why they're tender, because that's also really connected to our nasal passages and stuff. So very gentle for you today. But we're going to do 8 breaths total. The first 4 breaths, we're going to push in together on our inhale. And we're going to release the points on the exhale. And then we're going to reverse it, and we'll release on our inhale and press in on the exhale. And so what I want to invite you to do, and also anyone else listening and who's doing this, is to just take stock. Like, what number are you right now? Right now in this moment on that 0 to 10 scale, where 10 is freaking out and 0 is calm, like what number do you think that you are? What do you think?
I'm probably 4 is what came to me.
4. Yeah, perfect. Cool. So I usually check my number before I start so that I'm checking at the end. And it's really important because it's a way to show our body what's different and what's changed. So much of the time when we're doing techniques or we're trying practices and we're trying to calm ourselves down, if we don't feel all the way better, it didn't work. Right. So it's really about noticing teeny tiny little shifts. And so just taking a quick stock before I start to do something and then noticing at the end what's different is hugely important to start to retrain our nervous system and our brain. So if we find those points again, and we'll start with the 8 breaths. So you're going to put, those points. And so we'll just press in and inhale, release, exhale, press in, inhale, release, exhale, press in, inhale, Release, exhale. Press in, inhale. Release, exhale. Keep it released and take your inhale. Press in, exhale. Release, inhale. Press in, exhale. Release, inhale. Press in, exhale. And the last one, release. And press in, exhale. Now just take your hands away, and I just want to invite you, you can close your eyes or keep them open, and just notice like the energy around your head, what might feel different in your head, around your neck, in your body, noticing if your number feels different. And just taking a minute here. Yeah. What are you noticing?
I can feel my heartbeat.
Uh-huh.
I feel maybe, I don't know if my number has changed, but yeah, I feel like I have a stronger awareness of my heart beating.
Beautiful, right? So it's bringing us like right back to center. This is great before we have to like do work. A lot of times it's like clearing and wiping sort of like the brain to really refocus. So this is a great technique before you're speaking. Like if you have to like go, you're doing a Facebook Live or you're doing a podcast interview, to do this for yourself before you like log on. It's a really great way to like clear the cobwebs, clear the brain, and really send information to your whole nervous system like, hey, no danger, like we're really good, we're just like a body here in a room.
Yeah, come on. Okay, that's awesome. And it's so cool. Thanks for being game on the spot, because yeah, it's cool. It just, instead of talking about it, just to have a couple exercises where people can dive in with us and
absolutely
and do it. So really, like, last thing, I mean, really is just anything left on your heart, if you could leave, you know, a busy entrepreneur with a family and kids and stuff. Is there any final words, like, hey, if they remember nothing else, but you've really touched their heart and they're like, oh man, I want this, like, final words?
So much to say. What I will say is a little bit of what I was naming before, which is that our body has capacity to change. So much of the time when we're feeling burnt out or overwhelmed or stressed out, it feels like we're stuck that way, or it's going to be that way forever, or if we're in the middle of a transition and we really want to make our part-time thing the full-time, and we're like kind of in that in between space, like change is possible. Our bodies have just this amazing innate organic intelligence to rewire and reprogram and heal our old shit and heal our parents' shit and all the generations before and ahead. And so that we have that access. So to not like to notice when you're feeling like you're stuck, because that's an indication that we get to shift and change. So when we get into that really concrete black and white thinking, oh, it's never going to be different, or I'm really stuck this way, then we know something's kind of up and we really need to take the space to shift. So to just really give yourself lots of permission and patience to slow it down. I mean, the fastest way to success is slowing down. And that can be, it's so counterintuitive. I say this to athletes all the time too, like, rest, like actually take a break. And they come back to me all the time like, oh my God, like I had the best meet of my life, game of my life experience, because like I didn't work myself into the, you know, into the ground before that. And I would say that with, you know, the entrepreneurs that I work with, the more you're building in the space and time, as we're talking about, like my whole business is called Soma Synthesis Studios. It's about spaces for our healing, for ourselves, for our integration, so that we can be in really big, massive expansion and do the all things that we want to do. Right. So giving yourself lots of permission to start to envision it being different. That's really the first step, like showing yourself that it's possible. And, you know, I get to be a model, like those of us who are doing it, like I'm a mirror, like it's possible. I was completely burnt out. I had lots of autoimmune illnesses. Like my body was shutting down, and I have very good evidence that it's possible to shift. I was stuck on that 0 to 10 scale, a 10 for the first 30 years of my life.
Yeah.
And so I would say I'm now rested a 0. That's my baseline. Doesn't mean I don't get to a 10. Like I am, like we go up and down, but I'm not getting stuck. I'm not getting angry and stuck. I'm not getting stressed out and then staying worried for weeks. Like over time, I've learned how to interrupt those things and how to really help my body be in different patterns. And so I would say to everyone that like it's possible to shift and change and to have success in a way where we're not destroying our systems and ourselves and our relationships.
Come on. That's huge. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to just share your stories and your wisdom and basic strategies. I know that I have no doubt that for those watching, that if they take a beat and apply just a few of the things you're sharing, and I even took notes as we were talking, like I have no doubt that it's going to make a positive impact in my life and in the entrepreneurs' lives that are trying to figure it out. So Sara, thank you so much. We'll include your links just so that people can hear it. Where can people find you, or what's something if they want to get more involved with what you're doing? Where can they find you? How can they get closer to you?
Sure. So my websites are the greatest place to find sort of up-to-date information around my offers and what's going on. So my main healing and coaching website is saravatore.com. And then for athletes or performers, my website's peakperformwithsara.com. So those are really the good places. And for those of you listening who are curious to learn more, so I work one-on-one with folks. I work in couples. I have some group offerings where you're helping to expand your capacity really at that body level and at the energetic level. So I have coaching offerings, and I also host solo retreats for folks to come to the Massachusetts area, and you fly in and you have a weekend. I put you up in an Airbnb, and the whole weekend is yours to be in like your healing and your exploration and any goals that you have for your own body and your work for how you want to move forward. We do some hands-on work with your nervous system, and also really learning tools and strategies like we're talking about today around how to help your body not move into that burnout and how to really optimize your potential and your gifts. And for those of you who are more into the woo-woo magical stuff, that's a lot of what I do as well. I work a lot with folks with dream exploration and really accessing gifts and working with ancestral healing and all sorts of different things that have to do with the way that our body is holding patterns. So if any of that's curious, you can just check out my websites.
Come on. Well, guys, check out Sara's website. She's got a ton of really cool stuff on there. I've spent a good chunk of time reading through stuff, trying to educate myself. So, well, Sara, thank you so much. And everyone tune in next week to another episode of The Good Life. Woo woo.